Welcome, everyone. Let's dive into the intriguing discussion around how China gets a lot of things right. We're looking at Ben Norton's insights, and there's so much to unpack here.
Absolutely. It's really fascinating to see how he deconstructs those persistent, stereotypes about China.
Right, and it's like the narrative that the West always holds up China as a threat gets challenged head on here. Ben Norton, who's been spending time in Beijing, argues that when it comes to poverty reduction, economic growth, and even healthcare, China's got a lot going for it.
hmm Yeah, I mean, it's refreshing to see someone point out that the West might actually have a thing to learn from China's model on these social issues.
Exactly. And note how he talks about engaging in real dialogue. He suggests that the West needs to, get off its high horse to understand what a humane, pragmatic society might look like.
Yeah, but here's a question. Don't you think by focusing too much on these positives, we might risk overlooking um, some of the challenges China still faces?
Well, that's an excellent point. While there are definitely challenges, the core idea is that China has had this remarkable ability to lift millions out of poverty, and they're making strides in healthcare. It's a perspective that forces us to, rethink the simplistic narratives.
Right. hmm And it's interesting how Norton also emphasizes that the West hasn't really aimed for social prosperity since the 1960s, right? There's that subtle critique of Western priorities.
Exactly. And it's like if you compare the focus, China has really concentrated on a sort of bottom-up growth, ensuring that the masses benefit. Meanwhile, the West seems content with more elitist policies.
Yeah, that's a sharp observation. And there's also that component about the myths of military intent, right? Norton's piece touches on debunking the notion that China is aggressively preparing for war.
Absolutely. He challenges that prevailing theory by saying that the idea of China gearing up for war is more of a stereotype, a narrative concocted by Western media and politicians.
So, in a way, he's inviting us to um, look beyond the overblown rhetoric and appreciate the actual policy achievements in the realms of poverty and healthcare.
Yeah, and it's like this invitation for dialogue is really crucial. I mean, how often do we stop and say, hey, maybe we can learn a thing or two from the Chinese model?
Right. It makes me wonder why the collective discourse on these issues is so skewed. Is it because the West started prioritizing certain values like individualism, which, sometimes overshadow a focus on mass prosperity?
Exactly. There's an implicit critique here that the Western model, since the 1960s, seems to have lost touch with its social mandate, making it hard to compare apples to apples with China's model of social stability and growth.
True, true. And Norton's position kind of nudges us to see that while each system has its quirks, the stereotype of a combative, war prepared China is, oversimplified.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's about shifting the perspective from fear based narratives to a constructive dialogue about governance, societal priorities, and real world outcomes like better healthcare and poverty alleviation.
Now, I do wonder though, doesn't this perspective risk overcompensating by, say, downplaying some internal issues within China?
That's a fair challenge. I mean, while Norton's focus is on highlighting what China does right, it doesn't mean there aren't areas for improvement. But his goal seems to be to rebalance the narrative, which has historically been skewed by, political
Right, that makes
biases.
sense. So it's kind of a call for a more nuanced conversation where, you look at both sides of the coin instead of settling for sensational headlines.
Exactly. And think of it this way: West versus East, in a simplistic sense, is, a tired trope. Instead, this kind of insight urges us to consider how each system addresses its unique challenges, like ensuring widespread social welfare versus fostering a competitive individualist culture.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It really pushes us to rethink policies rather than succumbing to overly generalized criticisms.
Right. And what's interesting is how Norton uses his real life experience from living in Beijing to back up his arguments. It adds this authenticity that's often missing in dry academic debates.
That's so true. Yeah, his first-hand observations certainly empower his arguments about how China's policy approaches have tangible benefits on the ground.
And it's not just about policy successes. There's also this broader cultural dialogue about sovereignty and, what it means to prioritize the well being of the people versus strategic military posturing.
Right. That definitely adds a layer of complexity. For instance, while many in the West worry about military aggression, Norton's discussion suggests that the focus might be misdirected.
Exactly, because if you reframe the core issue, you see that China's primary drive has been focused on elevating living standards rather than just building up its military might.
Yeah, that's a pretty compelling argument. And it raises another interesting question. If the West were to adjust its priorities like this, could it, foster a more inclusive and prosperity-driven society?
Right, it's almost like a mirror challenge, wherein China's model, despite its criticisms, may actually point the way to a better model for social prosperity.
But wouldn't that require a major paradigm shift in Western political and economic thought? I mean, it's not something that happens overnight.
Absolutely, and it's easier said than done. The Western systems are deeply rooted in, different historical trajectories and ideologies. It's just a wake-up call to perhaps start rethinking those frameworks.
I completely agree. But I also wonder if some elements of that critique might be oversimplified. I mean, reducing it all to a high horse mentality might not capture the full complexity of Western policies.
Yeah, that's a fair critique. Right, it's a balancing act. While Norton's perspective is powerful, it needs to be contextualized with the understanding that every system has its inherent flaws and challenges.
Absolutely. It's like comparing apples and oranges sometimes. Both have their strengths and weaknesses in different areas.
Exactly. And the conversation here moves us away from a binary us versus them mentality to a deeper, more detailed debate about social policy and national priorities.
Yeah, that's a healthy shift. And it's interesting that beyond the policy details, this also touches on how cultural perceptions shape our political narratives. The West's portrayal of China often seems, one-dimensional.
Yep, and by bringing in real life experiences and successes in areas like healthcare and poverty reduction, Norton effectively challenges that stereotype. It's a call for more nuanced and balanced discussions globally.
Absolutely. In the end, it's about fostering a dialogue that learns from each other. Maybe the takeaway here is that both systems could benefit from a little cross-pollination of ideas.
Exactly. And as we wrap up, it's clear that questioning mainstream narratives, whether they be overly pessimistic or overly critical, is essential. These conversations lead us to a more thoughtful, effective approach to, social and economic policy.
Right, exactly. Thanks for this wonderful discussion. It really got me thinking about how complex and multifaceted these global issues really are.
My pleasure. It's been a great back and forth. Until next time, let's keep questioning and exploring these perspectives.